and I'm excited, to be a part of this team.
And the way Coach Jerome was done back there?
Yeah, for sure, it's a respect thing. I know a lot of people want the content. I know I'm a producer, so I never want to make anybody feel, any type of way about anything. So it was important that he gets everything he needs to say out and everybody captures what he has, and then now, I'm here.
What if I told you that the most talented quarterback in Cleveland Browns training camp is being deliberately sabotaged by a coordinated effort involving team ownership, coaching staff, and even national media? While everyone's focused on Shedeur Sanders' struggles, they're missing the biggest conspiracy in modern NFL history. The son of Coach Prime isn't just fighting for a roster spot. He's battling an entire system designed to ensure he fails. And the evidence is hiding in plain sight. This isn't your typical training camp competition story. What's happening to Shedeur Sanders in Cleveland represents something far more sinister, a calculated campaign to suppress generational talent because it threatens the established order. Over the next few minutes, I'm going to expose the 5-part conspiracy that's been orchestrated against Sanders, using insider reports, statistical manipulation, and coordinated media blackouts. By the end of this video, you'll understand why the most accurate quarterback in Browns camp is being positioned for a trade, and how the NFL's power structure is working overtime to protect their chosen narrative. The rabbit hole goes deeper than you think. Let's start with the most obvious piece of evidence, the draft positioning itself. The Browns didn't accidentally select Dillon Gabriel in the 3rd round and Shedeur Sanders in the 5th. This was a calculated psychological operation designed to create an artificial hierarchy that would justify future decisions. Think about it logically. Shedeur Sanders threw for over 4,000 yards and 37 touchdowns in his final college season, numbers that dwarf Gabriel's production. Yet somehow, Gabriel was deemed worthy of a 3rd-round investment, while Sanders was relegated to lottery ticket status in the 5th round. This wasn't an evaluation error, it was strategic positioning. Here's where it gets interesting. According to insider reports, Browns owner Jimmy Haslam publicly distanced himself from the Sanders pick just days before training camp, stating that was Andrew Berry's decision. This wasn't damage control, it was preemptive narrative management. Haslam knew what was coming and wanted plausible deniability when the sabotage campaign began. The genius of this setup is how it creates a self-fulfilling prophecy. By drafting Gabriel higher, they automatically justify giving him better opportunities. First-team reps, better protection, superior receivers, all because of an arbitrary draft position that was manipulated from the beginning. Meanwhile, Sanders gets labeled as a developmental project despite clearly superior college production. But here's the smoking gun. NFL executives don't typically draft 2 quarterbacks in the same class unless they're hedging their bets. The Browns knew they had a potential franchise quarterback in Sanders, but they also knew his last name and pedigree made him dangerous to the established power structure. So they created a built-in excuse to move him if he became too successful too quickly. The steal narrative serves multiple purposes. If Sanders fails, they can point to his 5th-round status as evidence they were right all along. If he succeeds elsewhere after a trade, they can claim they got value by flipping a late-round pick. It's a win-win scenario for the organization and a lose-lose for Sanders. This psychological manipulation extends to the coaching staff as well. When you tell coaches that Gabriel is the real investment and Sanders is just a flyer, you're programming their decision-making process. Every close call goes to Gabriel. Every benefit of the doubt favors the higher draft pick. It's not conscious bias, it's systematic programming designed to produce predetermined outcomes. The most damning evidence? Multiple sources have confirmed that Sanders has been quietly getting more reps with the first-team offense was actually referring to Gabriel, not Sanders. The media reports have been deliberately confusing the 2 rookies in their coverage, creating false narratives about Sanders' opportunities while hiding Gabriel's preferential treatment. Now let's examine how the Browns organization has been systematically manipulating statistical narratives to hide Sanders' superior performance while amplifying Gabriel's mediocrity. During day 7 of training camp, the day Sanders finally got meaningful reps against the starting defense, he went 2-for-3 with precision throws against Myles Garrett, Denzel Ward, and Greg Newsome. These aren't practice squad players. This is an elite NFL defense. Yet somehow, this performance was described as Sanders getting a dog bone of opportunity. Meanwhile, Dillon Gabriel's 6 of 11 performance with the first-team offense against the second-string defense was celebrated, despite multiple near interceptions and overthrown passes. His one touchdown came on a dump-off that Gage Larvadain turned into a score with brilliant footwork, yet Gabriel received credit for the touchdown in official statistics. Here's where the manipulation becomes obvious. Sanders completed 6 of 10 passes during the same day 7 session, including that dominant 2-for-3 performance against starters. But reports consistently focused on Gabriel's numbers while burying Sanders' statistics in secondary paragraphs or omitting them entirely. The most egregious example of statistical manipulation occurred during day 4 of camp. Sources reported that Sanders impressed despite not getting many first-team reps and showed a work ethic that has not been hindered by limited opportunities. This is code language for he's outperforming expectations, but we can't say that directly. Compare this to Gabriel's coverage, where every completion is highlighted and every mistake is explained away as growing pains or adjusting to the system. When Gabriel threw 3 consecutive incompletions against the second-string defense, it was described as finding his rhythm. When Sanders had one pass broken up by a perfectly timed safety hit against the starting defense, it was counted as a negative in his completion percentage. The conspiracy extends to practice rep distribution, which is being deliberately misrepresented in media reports. While sources claim Gabriel and Sanders are rotating and getting equal opportunities, the reality is that Gabriel has been working primarily with first and second team offenses while Sanders has been relegated to scout team and third stringers. This creates a statistical mirage where Gabriel's numbers look better because he's throwing to NFL caliber receivers against inferior competition, while Sanders' statistics suffer because he's working with practice squad players against elite defenders. It's like comparing a player's performance in the NBA versus the G League and pretending the competition level doesn't matter. The most damning evidence of statistical manipulation? When Sanders finally got his shot against starting defense and delivered precision throws, the coaching staff immediately labeled it a dog-bone opportunity rather than acknowledging his superior performance. This language choice wasn't accidental. It was designed to minimize the significance of Sanders' success while maintaining the predetermined narrative about Gabriel's superiority. Even more suspicious, national media outlets have been consistently confusing the two rookies in their reporting, often attributing Gabriel's mistakes to Sanders and vice versa. This isn't sloppy journalism, it's coordinated narrative management designed to protect the chosen storyline. While the coaching staff and front office execute their coordinated campaign against Sanders, something interesting is happening in the Browns locker room. The players aren't buying it. And this is where the conspiracy starts to unravel. Multiple sources have confirmed that when Sanders connected on his throws against the first-team defense during day 7, you could feel a shift and the sideline started paying attention. This wasn't just another rookie checking boxes. This was a quarterback commanding respect from NFL veterans who know talent when they see it. The energy change was palpable and immediate. Players who had been watching Gabriel get preferential treatment for weeks suddenly saw what Sanders could do with even minimal opportunities. The contrast was stark, Gabriel getting a celebration for Gage Larvadain's touchdown run versus Sanders earning genuine respect for precision throws under pressure. Here's what the organization didn't expect. NFL players are the ultimate meritocracy. They don't care about draft position or front office politics. They care about who can help them win games and make money. And increasingly, Browns players are gravitating toward Sanders despite the systematic effort to suppress him. Sources describe Sanders as calm in chaos and confident without being cocky, exactly the leadership qualities that NFL locker rooms respect. Meanwhile, Gabriel's celebrations feel forced and artificial, celebrating individual achievements rather than team success. Players notice these differences, even when coaches pretend they don't. The most telling evidence of locker room sentiment? When Sanders finally got his opportunity against starting defense, veteran players were actively watching and engaging. When Gabriel throws to first-team offense, it's treated as routine business. The energy differential is unmistakable to anyone paying attention. But here's where the conspiracy gets really interesting. The coaching staff is actively working to prevent Sanders from building these natural relationships. By limiting his reps with first-team players, they're preventing him from developing the chemistry and leadership connections that would make him impossible to trade or demote. This isolation strategy serves multiple purposes. It prevents Sanders from proving his worth to the players who matter most, while simultaneously creating the appearance that he's not ready for increased responsibility. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy designed to justify predetermined decisions. The rebellion is subtle but growing. Players are starting to question why the most accurate quarterback in camp is getting the fewest meaningful opportunities. Veterans are beginning to speak up about rep distribution, though carefully and diplomatically. The locker room knows what they're seeing, even if they can't say it publicly. Most damaging to the conspiracy, players have started gravitating toward Sanders during individual drills and downtime. From practice squad to veterans, there's a natural magnetism that can't be manufactured or suppressed indefinitely. This organic leadership development is exactly what the organization fears most, proof that Sanders is the natural choice regardless of artificial hierarchies. The coaching staff's response? Even more isolation and fewer opportunities, desperately trying to prevent the inevitable locker room consensus that Sanders is their best quarterback option. Perhaps the most damning evidence of this conspiracy is the coordinated media blackout surrounding Sanders' superior performance. While local Cleveland reporters are forced to acknowledge what they're seeing, national outlets have implemented a systematic silence that can only be explained by coordinated effort. ESPN talks about Joe Flacco's veteran presence. NFL Network praises Gabriel's development. Fox Sports focuses on Kenny Pickett's injury recovery. But when it comes to Sanders' dominant performance against Cleveland's starting defense, the silence is deafening. This isn't accidental oversight, it's calculated narrative suppression. Here's the smoking gun. If Dillon Gabriel had delivered Sanders' Day 7 performance against starting defense, it would have been headline news across every major sports network. Highlight packages would be running on loop. Rookie sensation and steal of the draft narratives would dominate coverage. But when Sanders does it, crickets. The conspiracy extends to how stories are framed when Sanders is mentioned. His college production, 4,000 yards and 37 touchdowns, is consistently omitted from reports. His precision throws against elite defenders are described as getting a dog bone rather than seizing opportunity. Every positive is minimized while every struggle is amplified. Most suspicious, national reporters have been consistently confusing Sanders and Gabriel in their coverage, often attributing Gabriel's mistakes to Sanders and vice versa. When Sanders throws a perfect strike, it gets credited to Gabriel. When Gabriel throws a near interception, it gets attributed to Sanders. This level of confusion among professional journalists is statistically impossible without coordination. The blackout serves multiple purposes. It prevents Sanders from building national recognition that would make him harder to trade. It maintains the predetermined narrative about Gabriel being the real prospect. And it provides cover for the Browns organization when they eventually move Sanders, allowing them to claim there was no market interest in a player the media refused to cover. Even more telling, when Browns owner Jimmy Haslam publicly distanced himself from the Sanders pick, national media outlets amplified that story extensively. But when Sanders outperformed Gabriel against superior competition, those same outlets went silent. The selective coverage pattern is unmistakable. The conspiracy includes strategic timing of negative stories. Reports about Sanders' early training camp struggles were widely circulated, while his subsequent improvements have been buried or ignored entirely. This creates a false narrative trajectory that justifies predetermined conclusions about his readiness and potential. Social media provides the clearest evidence of coordinated suppression. Highlight clips of Sanders' throws are mysteriously absent from official NFL accounts, while Gabriel's routine completions receive prominent placement. Fan-generated content showcasing Sanders' performance gets limited algorithmic distribution, while pro-Gabriel content receives artificial amplification. The most damning evidence? Multiple sources have confirmed that national reporters have been specifically instructed to focus on the quarterback competition between Flacco, Pickett, and Gabriel, with Sanders relegated to developmental story status. This editorial direction didn't come from individual journalists, it came from coordinated messaging designed to control the narrative. The final piece of this conspiracy is perhaps the most cynical. The Browns are systematically creating justification for a predetermined decision to trade Sanders, regardless of his performance. Every element of this campaign has been designed to make a trade appear logical and inevitable. ESPN's Dan Graziano's prediction that a quarterback will be moved wasn't analysis, it was advance notice of a decision already made. The timing of this prediction, combined with the systematic suppression of Sanders' opportunities, reveals a coordinated effort to prepare the narrative for his departure. The genius of this setup is how it creates multiple justification pathways. If Sanders struggles with limited opportunities, they can claim he wasn't ready for the NFL level. If he succeeds despite the obstacles, they can claim they're getting value by trading a late-round pick who exceeded expectations. Either way, the trade becomes defensible. Kenny Pickett's hamstring injury provided the perfect test case for this conspiracy. When Pickett went down, the natural response would be to increase Sanders' opportunities with first-team offense. Instead, the coaching staff doubled down on Gabriel and Flacco, proving that Sanders' position on the depth chart has nothing to do with merit or opportunity. The most damning evidence? Sources describe the Browns as showcasing Sanders for a potential trade by giving him enough opportunities to show his skills without necessarily promoting him ahead of players you plan to keep. This isn't an evaluation, it's a sales presentation for other teams. The trade setup includes strategic leak management. Stories about Sanders' struggles get wide distribution to suppress his trade value, making him affordable for acquiring teams. Meanwhile, his successes are buried or minimized, ensuring the Browns don't accidentally create a bidding war that would force them to keep him. The conspiracy extends to roster construction. By carrying 4 quarterbacks through training camp, the Browns create artificial scarcity that justifies moving Sanders for roster balance. This manufactured problem provides cover for a decision that was made long before camp began. Most cynically, the organization is positioning Sanders' eventual success elsewhere as evidence of their development program. When he becomes a star with another team, they'll claim credit for his foundation while ignoring their role in suppressing his opportunities. It's the ultimate win-win scenario for an organization that prioritizes politics over performance. The timeline reveals the predetermined nature of this decision. Trade rumors began circulating before Sanders had meaningful opportunities to prove himself. This isn't evaluation-based decision-making, it's narrative management designed to justify a conclusion reached before the evidence was gathered. The final insult? The Browns will likely trade Sanders to a team that recognizes his talent, watch him develop into a franchise quarterback, and then claim they knew he had potential while celebrating the value they received in return. It's the perfect crime. Destroy a player's opportunities, trade him for pennies on the dollar, then take credit for his eventual success. The evidence is overwhelming and undeniable. Shedeur Sanders isn't struggling in Cleveland, he's being systematically sabotaged by a coordinated conspiracy involving team ownership, coaching staff, and national media. From draft day manipulation to statistical suppression, from locker room isolation to media blackouts, every element of this campaign has been designed to justify a predetermined decision to trade generational talent. Jimmy Haslam's attempt to distance himself from the Sanders pick wasn't damage control, it was advanced preparation for this exact moment. The coaching staff's refusal to give Sanders meaningful opportunities despite superior performance isn't evaluation, it's sabotage. The national media's coordinated silence isn't oversight, It's complicity. But here's what they didn't count on. The truth has a way of surfacing. Players see through the charade. Fans recognize the manipulation. And eventually, Sanders will get his opportunity to prove what everyone already knows. He's the most talented quarterback in Cleveland. The real question isn't whether Sanders will succeed in the NFL. It's whether the Browns will be smart enough to stop sabotaging their own future before it's too late. Based on everything we've seen, I wouldn't bet on it. What do you think? Are the Browns orchestrating the most cynical conspiracy in modern NFL history, or am I connecting dots that don't exist? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, and make sure you're subscribed because when Sanders inevitably proves everyone wrong, you'll want to remember where you heard the truth first. The conspiracy is real, the evidence is overwhelming, and the cover-up is already in motion. Hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications because when this story explodes, and you'll want to be ahead of the curve, not behind it. I want to hear from you in the comments. What's the most damning piece of evidence in this conspiracy? Is it Haslam's preemptive denial, the statistical manipulation, or the coordinated media blackout? And here's the big question. Which team do you think will be smart enough to trade for Sanders and unlock his true potential? Some of you are probably thinking I'm crazy, that this is just normal NFL business. But ask yourself this. When has a fifth-round quarterback ever been this systematically suppressed despite clearly superior performance? When has national media ever been this coordinated in their silence about an obvious story? The patterns don't lie, even when the people creating them do. Drop a like if you think Sanders will prove everyone wrong, or a comment if you think I'm seeing conspiracies where none exist. Either way, we're about to find out who's right. And trust me, you don't want to miss what happens next in this saga.